What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the WB Games 4 pillars. If you recall, we actually talked about this, I think, November of 2024, but it's been reset, and there is one interesting part about this that I really want to zero in on. If you recall, they talked about, okay, we're going to do this restructuring, and we're going to really focus on these four kind of franchises, all right? And they've all relatively stayed the same, except I would argue the DC one. So remember, back then, still right now, those franchises are Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones, and DC, like the DC universe. Now, back the first time we talked about this, I think it was David Zaslav that talked about it, and he said very specifically, he said, we're mainly talking about Batman. Like when we say DC, we're really focusing on Batman. Now, this time, we're getting kind of leaders of each department, and then we're also getting doubling down, but they remove that Batman part. So the only things they say now is there's still four pillars. It's still Harry Potter, which we'll talk about specifically in a second. Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones, and the DC universe, but they don't say primarily Batman. So I'm going to take that and run with it in just a second. And now, the people that are running this, I'm very bad with names, so we're going to try to avoid that, but there's been an individual that's been heading up WB Montreal, Games Montreal, for the last about a year or so. And I don't know what they were necessarily doing for the last year, but that individual is now in charge of Harry Potter and Game of Thrones. He's done a lot. He actually worked back in the day with like Dead by Daylight. That was an interesting thing that I just like looked up, what has he done before. He was in charge of kind of growing Bethesda. Bethesda has a Montreal studio. He was there for, I think, 8, 9, 10 years, and he grew that, and they play a key part with Bethesda. So, he's got some experience, and he's only been, with WB for about a year, but he's definitely been around for, 20 plus years. And then the head of NetherRealm is going to handle DC and Mortal Kombat. So 2 and 2. They're each responsible for 2 franchises. And, interesting who they're giving it to, because, like, the head of WB Montreal getting not DC, and then the head of NetherRealm, I mean, they do get Mortal Kombat. That person, by the way, has been there, I think, since, like, 2002, or you can look up his whole, just what he's worked on. I mean, it goes back to some of the very early Mortal Kombat games, played a big part in all of those, Injustice, so on, so on. So, again, people with experience, I'll definitely say that. So, again, biggest thing, main takeaway is that, I think they open it up a little bit, right? Now, I do think they're going to kind of double and triple down on Batman. I don't really think that's going to change, especially in the short term. But, just having DC, wouldn't it be nice if maybe we had a Wonder Woman game being worked on right now? They've made some really silly decisions, and silly is putting it lightly, and for YouTube purposes, I would say other words. But no, I mean, like, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to have like an Aquaman thing or a Teen Titans? I always pitch a Teen Titans cooperative thing. They want to go cooperative. They want to go live service, whatever. Teen Titans is sitting right there for you to take on, right? I mean, it would be nice if you had some sort of plan, kind of beneath the depths here, or at least like not shut down, because by the way, you're running with one less studio. Wouldn't it be nice to have maybe one of the Monolith people be working on this stuff too? You don't have them. You don't have Wonder Woman. So, it's not a perfect spot. And by the way, because I have seen people say, like, what about Lord of the Rings? Yeah, I don't know. Like, Game of Thrones is an interest. Harry Potter is a no-brainer. Okay, that's an easy one. There's really not much to say there, right? I've talked about tripling down on Harry Potter for like 6 years before anybody else on YouTube was saying that, okay? Harry Potter, done. When it comes to Game of Thrones is an interesting one, because I will say I do think it has potential, but it's never really been leveraged in like AAA gaming. Like, we had Telltale's Game of Thrones was like the thing. And by the way, that was one of the worst Telltale games they've ever made. I mean, I've played all of them. Genuinely, in my opinion, that's one of the worst that they've ever done. So that wasn't even all that good. And then the way you've leveraged it is what, mobile? Mobile's good for that moneymaker type stuff, but for people like you and me, I don't think we're looking towards that, right? So when I hear Game of Thrones, that Game of Thrones game that was just announced at Summer Game Fest, I think it was, right? And it's going to be like an RTS, and there's a lot of potential with that. Now, they didn't show anything, so there's a lot of doubt in my mind if it's even going to be a thing and even going to be good. But that's something. I mean, you could do just do a AAA open world Witcher style Game of Thrones game. But RTS is fine, or mixing around all the different types of genres. Why Lord of the Rings isn't part of that is odd. I can understand why Game of Thrones is. I would also argue it hasn't really been used to its potential ever. And in terms of gaming, I guess, right? But like, why not Lord of the Rings? That's a huge one. And then See, the Mortal Kombat one is aging worse and worse. It really is. Like, NetherRealm is talented. Ed Boon will always be a legend, all this stuff that anybody can say. But Mortal Kombat is really struggling. You had, I think, a good era. I really liked, 9, 10, 11. I'm a really big fan. I'm a big fan of the story, even of those games, even when 11 got a little crazy. I honestly liked it. But, we've talked about it over and over and over again. When it came to 1, I mean, just my own gripes with the story, but how about just like how the world took Mortal Kombat 1? These games did really well. Really, and I mean, like, you think about why they even made Mortal Kombat 1 in the first place. Like, yeah, they probably had some issues and didn't know if they were going to get sold, that, injustice and stuff like that. So maybe that kind of directed them to go to Mortal Kombat. But honestly, like, these games just kept doing better and better. You could argue maybe they weren't always getting better, but they were doing better. And so, 11 did so well. They kept that game alive through the, kind of live service-y type path. They kept that alive a long time for a fighting game, which is becoming more and more common now. But I mean, they did a really good job there of just surviving, so I can see why they did 1. But then now 1, this is where it struggles. 1 did not sell well. 1 was supposed to be supported for like multiple, not 1 year, multiple, probably even beyond 2, probably 3-4 years they wanted to do it. An unreal amount of content was supposed to come to Mortal Kombat 1, and they cut it off. I mean, Ghostface made the cut, which I'm very happy about, but I mean, they shut that thing down fast. So that is not a good look. It's also not a good look that you have the head of NetherRealm being this head of 2 of your huge departments when, like, the last game, and even like WB Montreal, I'm not going to hold much over him because he had nothing to do with it, but funny that, like, should anybody from WB Montreal be in charge of a lot of things, right? These are people that made 1 game in 10 years, and it was Gotham Knights, and you could get deeper into like the philosophy of all this stuff, but I mean, honestly, like, Mortal Kombat's an odd one, because do you really want to triple that? You have 4 pillars. 4. That's it. That's your entire game company. It's 4 things. And one of them is going backwards. Like, in front of your face. One of them in Game of Thrones has, for whatever reason, never really been like exploited in for sales and for that. So, okay, what are you doing there? Mortal Kombat is more on the way down. Now, it could be a fast down, could be one bad thing and then all of a sudden it's back up. It's a game franchise that's been around forever. Okay, I'm not trying to like say Mortal Kombat's the worst thing in the world, but to have it be one of your 4, you only have 4, and that's one of them, is a really weird choice considering the state that it's in literally right now, and really over the last like 2 years it's been in this kind of state. So very odd. And then of course DC, I mean, that should probably be like 60% of your business, if I'm being honest with you. You just get whatever you can at this point, right? You get what I mean. Funny, you have Multiverses that shuts down all this. I mean, you can go into just, again, the laughable things that have happened, but solid. I'll give them like a 5 out of 10, right? Because ultimately I kind of have a problem with 2 of the 4. So, but you know what? This is a company that struggles, and they've struggled for longer than they really should have, and somehow they've survived it, which I give them a lot of credit for, I guess, of just like living. But if I were to judge this philosophy and their business practice, I would give it 5 out of 10, 50%, because I think 50% of it is really wise. You just triple down on Harry Potter at this point, and you would probably be okay. But remember, final thing, Hogwarts Legacy. Well, I just said, saving the company, or the fact that somehow this company has survived all of this. I'm telling you right now, there's 0% chance WB Games as an entire entity would have survived if Hogwarts didn't work. If Hogwarts failed, if Hogwarts lost money, and not even just lost money, if Hogwarts didn't sell 22 million units, if it sold 5, which would be good, by the way, a lot of games would take 5. There's no way this company would still be around. They made with a B off of Hogwarts Legacy. And I think if you remove Hogwarts from them, they have had the worst possible stretch you could imagine, financially, optically, whatever. So I answered my own question. How have they made it this far? Hogwarts has saved them the last 2.5 years. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and hope to see you all on the next one.